for this particular funding, they can get this information from our schools, Mr. Speaker. Every teacher knows the child who sleeps angry. Every teacher can be able to tell you a child who has no father, a child who is a total orphan, a child who has well to do with parents. So the data can be availed in the schools. There is no need of doing a scientific way of getting data for this funding. This is availed in schools. Mr. Speaker, my question goes directly to the TVET, and I want to really thank the PS TVET because she is always available to answer questions when required to do so. Mr. Speaker, up to this time, the TVET institutions, and it's the fourth quarter, they have not gotten any single cent in matter of funding. And the students in those schools can be very raw. Mr. Speaker, if it is not possible, I think there should be a mechanism of ensuring that the principals are allowed to charge some little money even for operations, so that at the end of the day, we don't have a replica of what is happening, what happened yesterday in multimedia. There is no water, no electricity, nothing. Mr. Speaker, what is the ministry doing to ensure that capitation is released in our schools at the earliest opportunity so that our teachers don't suffer?
Mr. Speaker, with regards to the loans that are given to the students, what is the interest rate that they are supposed to pay back with? And my second comment is actually on the capitalization of the. Now, it is given per student, and I have asked this question before to your predecessor, Mr. CS, and I don't know whether I take it as a concern in my constituency that because you give capitation per student, per capita, what it has done is that there are some very, very industrious, some very, very finance-oriented head teachers who are overstaffing their schools because that's when they can get more money. Is there a policy in the ministry to curb students per class? And is that policy actually being implemented as of now? Because some of our schools are underpopulated while some are overpopulated. And just because the head teacher knows how to get around it and get more money. But I had one
each. Ferdinand, we're coming to an end. So ask one question each.
Yeah, I want to take this opportunity to thank the CS for trying to answer some of these questions. But the most important thing, as I'm a slightly older student of the University of Nairobi, why don't you go back to the old system? Because it looks like, from what I'm seeing and from your presentation, when a CS, I think this system is not going to work. Let's go back to the old system because we have enough universities in this country. Plus, of course, we are having also TVET. I want also to say that, of course, my TVET in Kwanzaa has not been completed because you have already contributed, but we have enough institutions. Why don't you go back to the old system? Because this one here, it looks from my colleagues and from your presentation, the system is not working. Go back.
Thank you. Ochanda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the ministry, the CS, are really struggling to sort out a problem in the country. And that's why exactly we have these banding issues. But as we look at that, they are trying to target the 130,000 plus students. Besides that, there are over 300,000 plus students in year 2 to year 6, some to extreme situations of year 8 and year 9. What is it that the ministry is doing for this group of students, knowing that there's an issue, there's a big problem? What is it that the ministry is doing to sort out the mess that there is in Or are we to wait for the transition for the next 4 years to sort out their problems?
Q. Is that a member for Kinango? No. At the back? Yes. Is that Gashagwa? There's a lot of reflection I couldn't quite tell.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No. I'm not Rigiji. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. And I rise to ask or to request the CS. Why can't we revert back to the old model? Because the variables considered in this banding are quite misleading. Mr. Speaker, when you ask someone the salary of a parent, and you place someone to a certain band, and maybe someone earns 100,000, and the responsibilities are fewer than that person who earns a different amount. Why should we place somebody why should we place a student considering the salary or the income, not considering the responsibility of a parent?
Thank you. Museo Yula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I have an issue regarding the assurance by the ministry on the system. Can the ministry assure this House that the system will not be tampered with? I'm asking that because, Mr. Speaker, I have a case of a disabled student who was placed in Band 1 last year. Come this year, it moved to Band 2. So what happened? Why was the student moved from Band 1 to Band 2, and this is a disabled student? Secondly, the linkage with KRA, Mr. Speaker, is not a correct idea because many of our parents have no PIN numbers. So I will say a case where a student was put on Band 5, yet the parent is just a shoemaker in the village. So what criteria is being used?
Or a shoemaker?
A shoe repairer.
As a cobbler.
Yeah. So what assurance, what criteria is the ministry or is the system using to place these students in those Band 5, and yet they are very poor from the villages?
Thank you. Murugara? Minister, you will not some are repeat questions. So where there are repeat questions, you just refer to your earlier answers, but let's give everybody an opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is whether university fees are standardized. That is, are they the same? And if so, the collections made by each university, is the revenue part of the revenue of the university, or it forms the part of the exchequer, in which case there has to be further funding, especially now that we have a huge number of students joining universities. The infrastructure is strained, it's constrained, and students possibly have even to go for lectures, not in lecture halls, but outside through windows at water view. Exactly how does the ministry plan to ameliorate some of the problems, in infrastructural problems we have with our universities through the funding?
Thank you. Member for, is it Kajiado East? South. Yes, honorable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted just to start by saying the country, we are tired of demonstration. There was demonstration of teachers, now students are almost giving ultimatum. And the issue is under Article 95. This House has been given the mandate by the Kenyan people to see what is right concerning their issues. And Mr. Speaker, if you see, the piloting is wrong, application procedure again is wrong, the parameter of static, for example, if today I'm employed, by next year I'm not employed, it doesn't clearly state. Mr. Speaker, I think the whole thing is wrong. That's my observation. And I need you to give directives. We request that we give directives that the ministry take the Kenya Republic or the Kenyan people serious. My question is the final one. We need to ask the ministry. They need to cost the actual cost. And Mr. Speaker, in all levels of education.
How do you cost the actual cost?
For example, in secondary schools, now parents are forced to pay BOM teachers. So when you do capitation, they are not considering the issue of BOM teachers that the parents are paying. So we need to know when they are saying free, tackling the free, they need to understand that we need to understand the actual cost of education, not taking the cost on the service.
Okay.
So the final one, Mr. Speaker, is equity.
Lel Mengit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I would like to disagree with the CS for education when he just mentioned that it will take months to come up with data on what is the exact cost of education if we were to make the education in this country free. I think we are addressing a different, we are addressing a problem with different solutions, Mr. Speaker. With the task force that has been formed should incorporate 50% of data scientists. This is simple maths, Mr. Speaker. Data is available, it's only to analyze. We don't need professors, we just need a Gen Z to do a data analysis and come up with possible options on possible ways of funding these programs. So this the new program is not working, Mr. Speaker, and I think we should revert back to the old program so that we can save this country and make the students work well, have a humble time to study in school. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, is on the TVETs. Recently, Mr. Speaker, adverts were placed and a certain number of teachers for particular institutions like the TVETs were advertised and interviews were done. However, only a few got the letters of appointments and in different professions on those TVET institutions. One case example is for Mgwen TVC. Adverts were done for 5 professions, yet only 2 have received the letters of appointments. And lastly, the CS. Today, the university's academic staff union commenced a strike. How are you planning to resolve this issue? Thank you.
Yes, Robert Mbui.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first I wanted to just advise the CS because there is a casual comment that he made, and you know we are unanswered when answering the question he had asked of what has happened to the 14,171 students, and he said something to do with that some of them are probably married. Now, that may have because it's unanswered, that might annoy not just the young students, but also even the gender, because that's very, very chauvinist. Mr. Speaker, there is an issue that was raised by the Honorable Member T.J. Kajwang on the Article 94 of the Constitution. And Mr. Speaker, I want to just report that the Ministry of Education, not under his leadership, persistently has gone astray on this particular article, because he has just mentioned in his report here that the safety standards manual that they came up with. Mr. Speaker, in the strict reading of the Statutory Instruments Act on what a statutory instrument is, you realize that that is defined as one of the subsidiary legislations. So if you are coming up with a standards manual, safety standards manual for schools, then it has to have been brought to the House, Mr. Speaker, for approval. It was never brought. Now I've seen in his report he's saying now he wants to give it some legality. Which, what it really means, Mr. Speaker, is that even if a school owner breaches the safety manual, there is nothing the ministry can do because there is no law that they have broken. So they have to be very careful. Mr. Speaker, I have only one question, and this is in regard to preparedness for grade 9 next year. In January 2025, Mr. Speaker, which is barely 3.5 months from now, you know, about 1.5 million students in grade 8 will be transitioning to grade 9. And this is in over 30,000 schools in Kenya. That means we need to have over 30,000 classrooms built for them. We need to have over 30,000 laboratories, and we need to have enough teachers. Is the ministry prepared for the next 3.5 months? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister I think just hold. We have very few left. And some have been repeat questions. Taitum, just take all of them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Where they overlap, you
While the CS and his team are trying very hard to streamline the hiccups that there are within the ministry, and particularly with the new funding model, I would like to ask about the costing of the programs. It is very clear that while the ministry is pumping a lot of money to public universities through grants and other forms of support, most of courses, particularly the premier courses, are costing more than what is happening in private universities. For example, to train a doctor in Nairobi University.
University of Nairobi.
University of Nairobi. It is far away than training a doctor in Mount Kenya University, which is a public, which is a private university. Why do we have this difference? Whereas we know that the public universities are being supported and the private universities are not being supported.
Thank you. Deco.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to raise an issue concerning COOP's placement of students, in that we have challenges where students from far-flung areas of the region are being placed all the way from Mandera, Garissa, to go and do education courses, Bachelor of Education at universities in Kisumu, Eldoret.
That is how to build a nation. Is that a big...
But there is a cost implication involved in this, Mr. Speaker. You cannot have all, students being picked from far-flung areas all the way to Kisumu, yet these parents cannot afford even the university fees, cannot afford accommodation in those areas. So they should consider, because we have universities within that general area. We have Garissa University, which we can place certain students, and again, picking a student from Kisumu, he will not report to Garissa University for sure. So my suggestion will be, consider certain courses that are offered in certain universities within that locality and within that region to be placed in those universities. Otherwise, we'll have them dropping out of those, reporting to those universities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last, Martin Owino. Kiamba, you came late.
Thank you.
Okay, you'll be the last.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I represent a very rural community called Ndewa constituency. And the answer which I got as a solution for lack of access to internet cannot be tolerated. Can the CS give us an elaborate strategy for making internet be accessible to students, especially in rural setting? And can he also work with the ICT ministry to make sure that happens? Added to that, the issue of Elimu scholarships, 12 billion from 2020 to 2024. How was the selection done? Can that be broken down to constituencies?
Thank you. Kiamba, the very last.
Mr. Speaker, I think I have only two short questions. One is the fact that while we appreciate your innovativeness, because things have to change, we cannot stay the same. I was wondering what informed you when you are having the lowest band at 5%? Because when we are addressing bursaries, we know we are dealing with students who cannot pay anything. We even pay for them to the bus fare to go to school. Why don't you have those category of the invisible poor that we have been taking care of? That is my one question. The second question is, we know this country is as a paradigm shift from centralization to decentralization. And that was the major drive towards devolution. And all this was aimed at enhancing service delivery. Now we have seen with the capitation that it takes years, if not months, for schools to get capitation. If it was not for the NGDF, most of the lower schools, day schools would be closed because this capitation comes much late. I would want to understand what is the rationale, or what would we really be looking for when we are trying to centralize everything, when we know the bottlenecks we have actually experienced in centralized service delivery. Thank you.
Minister, you can now answer all those very quickly.
Yes, I'll start. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll start with Dorothy. On the issue of NEMIS, it is true we have that program, but that system. But what the MTI is trying to do is not just the identification of the child, but of the means of the parents. And that is why we are combining these linkages with various other areas so that we can get them to be in the right band. And with the issue of TVET not having received any money, the TVET have already received their capitation. I think they received 4,470,000,000 just a day or two ago, so the disbursement has already been done. We are working closely with Treasury to ensure that these resources reach the schools so that they are able to run. And Treasury, even with the hard financial situation that we are in, and you know that because of the finance bill, has tried very hard to ensure that schools get resources in order not to close. So thank you very much for caring for TVET. That's much appreciated. Honorable Sunkuli, the loan interest rate is 4%. That is charged, but it is part of the issues that is going to be considered by the committee to find out whether this 4% can be reduced. And in terms of
yes, Ferdinand, who do you want to inform?
Well, I mentioned in passing, but it's true, my TVET has not been funded, despite the fact that I contributed. That's what I said. I contributed that TVET, but the ministry has not done its part. So we had lost. I just wanted you to explain why we have done the contribution as members of parliament, but you have not put in your contribution to complete the infrastructure of this TVET.
Yes, I'm coming to your question. In fact, I was just answering Dorothy's question with respect of capitation that has not gone to schools for the students, the TVET schools. But I'm coming to the infrastructure aspects for your particular school. So I was saying it's 4%, and one of the concerns that is there is at what point should students start paying loans once they complete university studies? Is at the point where they get employment. That's the structure that we want to come up with so that at the end you are paying what you have. And for Ferdinand, I can confirm that for your particular case, the funding has been done, and the information I have, the Kwanza TVET, yes, all the paperwork has already been done, and the funding is awaited. It is the challenge that we have with the finance bill and the resources, but the funding, all the paperwork is done for our part. Since you've contributed to it, we are aware of it, and it's not the only one. There are many others that we are struggling to ensure that we complete them so that they can become functional and utilizable. So we are on it. Paperwork is completed. We have not forgotten. And then my brother Ochanda Mweshmiwa, who trained me sometimes back in 2000 and something, if I remember, the 300,000 or so students that are in year 2 all the way to 6 are under the capitation program. That is where the 38% has already been released for them. So they are not being left out. The new funding model is only dealing with the year 1 and 2 who joined last year. So they are taken care of. They've not been left. Gashagwa talks about us going back to the old model because the variables are misleading. And again, the answer is the same. The old model was not working effectively because of the lower disbursements of government, reducing from 80% to 38% this year. So that is the reason why we are on this model, which we hope we are going to be able to improve. Oyula, Honorable Oyula, the assurance that we can give you is that the system is not being tampered with, and it cannot be tampered with. What we will find out is what the cause of that error is. If it's one incident, you know, any particular IT system sometimes has hitches, and it can cause this particular move. And all that we need to do is get in there as help and find out what is the cause of this particular movement. If it is tampered with, it will leave footprints, and we are going to be able to find out if it is, then we'll get a solution for it. But as far as we are concerned, the system is not capable of being tampered with. The linkages with KRA, where the parents have no PIN numbers, and the cobbler is listed as in band 5, again, I said this could be an error related to the data that was put in. So until we look at the case individually and find out was the data that was put in correct vis-a-vis the student, then we'll be able to determine the reason of that outcome. And of course, the appeal system is available for this particular student to go ahead and amend. My brother Murugara, you talked about standardization of, is it courses?
University fees.
University fees. The university fees is determined using there is something called...
A point of order, Mr. Speaker. Because we are still unanswered, I want to request the CS to stop referring to members, like he just referred to the honorable member as my brother Murugara. You should refer to him appropriately.
Every member, Minister, is an honorable member. Whether he was your classmate or not, his honorable Murugara is not your friend for purposes of these proceedings.
I'm well guided. I think I can maybe hide behind being very new. This is my first time here. I'll be very careful.
Go ahead.
Honorable Murugara, the university fees is not standard because of the various other costs that are run in various universities. So there are other costs that they factor in. And in fact, I can answer this question together with the question that was raised as to why some public universities' fees is slightly maybe higher than the private universities. Because of other costs, for example, related to the number of staff that some universities have, these costs are fed in and they become part and parcel of the cost of the particular program. So they are not, the short answer to that is that they are not standardized. The member for Kajiado South, we are tired of demonstrations and that the piloting was wrong. Now, the question of whether the education for primary school is truly free is a question that we've grappled with here many times because there are other costs. In fact, I remember the last time we were here, I was told that sometimes uniforms cost more than what we are paying, and therefore it is not truly free. And this is the conversation that we are saying we need to have to ensure that if we are saying the education is free, is it truly and legally free, or are there other costs that come in and make it impossible to say it is free? So it is something that the ministry is grappling with to see what is the best way to deal with that aspect of the BOM, which comes about because we do not have perhaps enough teachers in those institutions, and the BOM, the parents have to employ some teachers to support the schools. So it is something that we are dealing with, but it is also tied to the funding and the capacity of the government to ensure that we have enough teachers in each and every institution. Lelmelit, Honorable Lelmelit. Lelmengit. We are addressing a problem with different solutions. It is true that in the committees that we have constituted, we put in a number of analysts and data statisticians to look at this model and ensure that it is as effective as possible so that we can get it working and ensuring that the results that we'll get will be as close as possible to the reality of each individual. On the issue of the strikes that are going on, there was a strike that is taking place as we speak, which we tried to avert and we were not able to manage. They have not signed the CBA for 2021-2025, and we are at the tail end of that cycle. And they have also issues of relating to the CBA of 2017 to 2021, one or two issues pending within that CBA in implementation. And this is, again, tied down to the questions relating to availability of resources because of budgetary constraints, and again, you tie it down to our finance bill. And what we were trying to negotiate with them is to ask for more time to ensure that we can come up with an answer or come up with an amicable solution to handle the issues that they have. And we are going to have another meeting with them tomorrow to see whether we can reduce the gap that we have and maybe they'll be able to go back to work. So we are doing something about it in the difficult situation that we are in, because we have to accept that we can't run the ministry on the basis of strikes, because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of resources and a lot of energy. Bwana Mbui, my apologies for using unparliamentary language.
He's not Bwana Mbui, he's Honorable Mbui.
Honorable Mbui, I'm sorry. Yeah, I need to go back and study this a little bit more. And the safety standards manual, we have said we are going to bring it here to ensure that we can anchor it in law so that it can have the force of law, so that where people are making a mistake or they are not complying, they can be penalized. With respect to grade 9 preparedness, we have started the construction of the 16,000 classrooms for grade 9 that have been assessed as required for grade 9, both the laboratories and the classrooms. And we are already at various stages of completion. We have classrooms that are at 3% and others are at 95%. And we are calculating that we'll finish 11,000 classrooms probably by mid-November, and thereafter we deal with the remainder of 3,000 or 4,000. Partly, there is an amount that was supposed to come through CDF, and we were supposed to work with you to do some classrooms. We are trying to push Treasury, or work with them, not push, to ensure that that money is released to you, work with yourselves, so that we can do the 3,400 classrooms that were supposed to be done by CDF. So we are working towards achieving and ensuring that by the time we are landing in January, we have all the 16,000 classrooms ready for grade 9 students who are coming in. I think I've answered the question of Taitum of costing of private, and Honorable Taitum costing more than private schools, public schools courses costing more than private schools. And that is sometimes because the private schools are running a tight ship. They have staff that are a little bit more reduced as opposed to public universities, and that's why sometimes the cost differs. Honorable Deco, the students.
Why do you take students from Garissa to Kisumu?
Yes, why we take students from Garissa to Kisumu. The students apply for certain courses and they are placed, but where a student feels